A young boy, abandoned and lost in the heart of a wildlife reserve, sat on the road, his sobs echoing through the silence. But then, from the thick bush, came a low growl. A massive lion, its eyes locked on the boy, slowly emerged, its presence sending a chill down the spine. The boy's cries grew louder as the lion moved closer, and just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something unbelievable happened. It was an ordinary morning in one of South Africa's wildlife reserves, where the air was still cool, and the sounds of nature were just beginning to stir. But that day would prove to be anything but ordinary. A small boy, no older than 4, was left alone, sitting on the side of a dusty road. His tiny frame was hunched over, crying uncontrollably. His sobs echoed through the empty reserve, a place where the peaceful beauty of nature met the unpredictable dangers of the wild. No one was around, no vehicles, no people, just the boy and the vast wilderness surrounding him. How he ended up there was a mystery. The reserve was not a place where people just wandered, but somehow he was there all alone. In the distance, something caught the attention of Scout, a large lion who roamed freely in the reserve. Scout had been raised here, far from the dangers of poachers and the prying eyes of tourists. He was a lion, fierce and strong, but there was something different about him. Over the years, he had developed an unusual bond with the humans in the reserve, especially with one ranger, Sam, who had saved him as a cub after his mother was killed. Scout had spent years living alongside other animals, learning the ways of the wild. But that morning, something made him pause. He sniffed the air, his powerful nose catching the scent of something unfamiliar. Following his instincts, Scout moved towards the source. As he neared the road, his eyes locked onto the small figure sitting there. The boy, unaware of the lion approaching, continued to cry, his little hands wiping away tears. Scout kept his distance but didn't leave. Instead, he circled the boy as if watching, studying. There was something about the child that made the lion hesitate. Was it the vulnerability in the boy's cries, or was it simply the fact that no animal in the reserve had ever been so helpless? The lion stopped just a few feet away, staring at the boy, his golden eyes never leaving him. Then, with a sudden deep roar, Scout released a sound that echoed across the reserve, shaking the earth beneath him. The boy's cries stopped instantly, and for a moment, the two locked eyes. But this wasn't an attack. It wasn't even a threat. Scout wasn't here to harm. He wasn't angry. In fact, he seemed to be trying to communicate something. The boy, now frozen, stared back at the lion, his tears drying on his cheeks. What happened next would be something that no one could have predicted. As the roar faded, Scout's behavior changed. He didn't back off. Instead, he stepped closer, still pacing around the boy, keeping an eye on the surroundings. It was as if the lion was trying to protect him. Meanwhile, Sam the ranger was out on his morning patrol. He had no idea that a child had wandered into the reserve, and certainly no idea that his beloved lion, Scout, was now face to face with the boy. As Sam drove his jeep through the reserve, he had no inkling of the danger lurking ahead. He turned a corner and then saw it, the sight that made his heart race and his blood run cold. There on the road was Scout towering over the boy, his large frame blocking any possible escape. Sam's heart dropped. He slammed on the brakes and quickly got out of the jeep, fearing the worst. But as he approached, he saw something that shocked him beyond belief. Scout was not attacking the boy. Instead, the lion was standing guard, watching over him like a protector. The young ranger stood frozen for a moment, not quite sure what to make of the scene. Sam stood there a few yards away, frozen in disbelief. His heart raced as he watched Scout, the lion he had known since he was a cub, standing protectively around the small boy. The lion, usually so powerful and fierce, seemed calm, almost gentle. It was like the two of them shared an unspoken understanding. The boy hadn't moved. He was still sitting on the ground, his wide eyes locked on Scout. He seemed mesmerized, his earlier tears now gone, replaced by a look of confusion mixed with wonder. Sam took a cautious step forward, his voice barely a whisper. "Hey there, little guy, are you okay?" The boy didn't respond. His eyes flickered between Sam and Scout. He was clearly frightened but strangely calm in the lion's presence. Sam knew he had to act quickly. His first instinct was to get the boy to safety, but he didn't want to make any sudden movements that might scare Scout. For what felt like an eternity, there was only silence. Sam's mind raced as he took another slow step forward. He could see the boy now, his clothes torn and dirty, his face pale, and his eyes wide with confusion. The kid was clearly lost. As Sam moved closer, he whispered again, more softly this time. "It's okay, you're safe now. We'll lead you back where you belong." Scout, still standing motionless beside the boy, seemed to acknowledge Sam's presence but didn't move. It was almost as though he was waiting for something. Sam paused, his hand slowly reaching into his pocket for his radio. But as soon as he did, Scout turned his head and let out a low growl. Sam froze. The growl wasn't threatening. It was a warning, something Sam had heard many times before in the wild. But it was different now. The growl didn't seem directed at Sam. It felt more like a warning to whoever or whatever had left the boy in such a vulnerable state. The ranger's mind began to race. Was there something else in the reserve? Had the boy's family been in danger? The thought made Sam's stomach turn. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a lost child. As he slowly inched closer, Sam finally spoke again. "It's okay, Scout. I've got it from here." To his surprise, Scout's growl softened, almost as if the lion understood Sam's words. The lion stepped back, giving Sam more space. For the first time since Sam had arrived, the boy seemed to breathe a little easier. He slowly stood up, still clutching his teddy bear, and Sam quickly approached him, kneeling down to the boy's level. "Where's your family?" Sam asked gently, trying to make eye contact with the child. The boy didn't speak. He only shook his head. Sam's heart sank. The boy's silence spoke volumes. He wasn't just lost, he was alone. And something told Sam that the boy had been out here for far longer than just a few minutes. Just as Sam was about to speak again, he heard a vehicle approaching. The sound of an engine grew louder, and soon another safari jeep rounded the bend. It was one of the other rangers, David, who had been searching for the boy ever since they received a call from the boy's parents hours earlier. David slammed the brakes, his eyes wide as he saw Scout and the boy together on the road. "Is he all right?" David called out, climbing out of his jeep, his voice full of concern. Sam nodded, still keeping a watchful eye on Scout, who had now stepped back into the shadows of the bush. The lion seemed to be watching, but from a distance, giving the boy space. Sam stood up slowly and answered, "He's safe now, but we need to get him out of here." David moved quickly, taking the boy's hand and guiding him towards the jeep. The boy, though clearly shaken, didn't resist. As they started walking, Sam couldn't help but look back. Scout was still standing there, watching, his golden eyes glowing in the fading light. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that the lion had somehow known what to do. It wasn't just luck that Scout had found the boy. There was something almost mystical about the whole situation. Scout, who had been raised around humans, had chosen to protect the boy without question. It was a rare bond, one that Sam could barely begin to understand. As David drove the jeep towards the reserve's main gate, Sam followed close behind, his thoughts swirling. What had happened to the boy's family? And how had Scout known that the boy needed protection? The next few days would reveal the answers. But what happened that day? How the lion had protected the boy in the middle of the reserve would stay with Sam for the rest of his life. And perhaps it would also change how the reserve viewed the bond between humans and wildlife. A bond that, in this case, had saved a life.